Hello and welcome to a mini spoiler sort of review, more discussion of Deadpool and Wolverine. I did like it, and like I said in the thumbnail, I do think that this was the life support that the MCU needed right now, but I'm still worried about how this fits into the future plans, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth. Before I get into positives and negatives, I do have a quick tip that helped me enjoy the movie more. If you're sort of stuck in a rut, trying to figure out your thoughts on it, this might really help you too. I would view this film, even though it's blatantly connected to the MCU, I would still view this film as its own self-contained adventure. I really think it's a losing battle trying to place this like a puzzle piece into the established lore, into the established rules that we've been given so far, trying to understand, like, is that possible based on what we know so far in the MCU, in the multiverse saga and all this? Turn that part of your brain off. I really think that you'll enjoy the movie 10 times more once you do that. I think that mirrors what probably happened in the writer's room for Deadpool and Wolverine. They were probably, if they were going through character Bibles and lore Bibles for recent projects, they were probably like, you know what? We're not going to try to tether ourselves down to a bunch of crisscrossed rules and concepts and approaches to the multiverse. Is it magic? Is it science? Is it both? Like, which one is, actually more powerful in the scheme of the multiverse? Blah, 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 blah. I think that they were probably like, you know what? We have some tools to play with. Who gives a shit how they really work? Let's just try to make a fun buddy comedy action movie. I think that that's the route that they took. Okay, moving on to positive points now. These are going to be pretty rapid fire, but let's just get through it. For me, my favorite part of the film, hands down, was Hugh Jackman. I mean, how are they ever going to find a new Wolverine? That's even one of the jokes in the movie, that Hugh Jackman's going to be contractually forced to do this until he's 90. And I mean, at this rate, I could see it. Who else could do what Hugh Jackman has done with this character? Someday, someone will get a chance to, but for now, I just don't think anyone else, I can't even picture the character live action as anyone else right now. I think that Hugh still has gas in the tank, despite the whole Logan thing, and we'll get into that, because, oh my gosh, the writer-director of Logan is a little bit butthurt, and oh my gosh, I mean, that's another thing we're going to talk about. Ryan Reynolds was also obviously another high point in the movie for me. Now, with this version of Deadpool, I view his casting, it's like transcendent casting, almost on the level of Hugh Jackman embodying Wolverine. Like that's what I mean by transcendent casting. Like, these people were meant to play this role. Ryan Reynolds and the whole Deadpool comedy style, it's not for everyone. Some people find it very grating and very annoying, but if you know that, then just don't see the movie. There's a sequence I loved where Deadpool is trying to find an alternative version of Wolverine, and I loved how it was like all these little blips. It was like each one was an homage to an iconic or a legendary comic book Wolverine scenario or a comic book cover. It was just great to see that homage to iconic comic media. The next point, I loved some of the cameos. I really think that some of them were underutilized. We'll talk about that later. But some of them really were just gems. Like, if you like some of the bad earlier Marvel movies, or just some of the ones that predated the MCU, you are going to be in for a treat. I really, really was not expecting some of them. And there were some where I literally in the theater was like, oh my God. No one else was, but I was pretty excited. One scene in particular that I loved, I'm just going to call it the Honda Brawl, or I guess you could call it the Honda Odyssey Brawl. If you know, you know. I thought that action scene was crazy, really well done. It was one of my favorites in the whole film. I also thought that the opening scene was just so shocking. I mean, huge mega spoiler warning. Literally killing a whole fleet of TVA agents using the decomposed adamantium corpse of the Logan version of Wolverine. That's why I'm saying the Logan director, he has been making shit comments about Deadpool and Wolverine, and I can kind of see why, because he really did pour his heart and soul into Logan. He wanted that to be the final send off for the character. He wanted it to like literally be elevated to a place of almost art, and now Deadpool is literally stabbing people to death with Logan Wolverine's rotted corpse, and while gyrating, touching himself, and dancing to Bye 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 by NSYNC. I mean, it's one of the most bonkers opening scenes that I've seen in a film in a very long time, and I'm very glad that it was in a Deadpool MCU film. That's what I meant earlier, like the life support that Marvel needed. This is so different from, because I think a lot of us were worried that Deadpool and Wolverine, even though it seemed a little bit edgy in the trailers, I think that a lot of us were worried that it was going to get Disney-fied and really sterilized, and that all of the R rating would just be for extra gore and maybe a few F-bombs and a few crude jokes here and there. Like, I really think that that's the vision that, at least that I had. I really thought that was a possibility, but that to open with Deadpool massacring people with Logan's corpse, I was like, they were given some leeway, and I'm really glad, because even though it sort of suffers from the MCU third act curse that we're going to talk about later, it was so different from what we're used to seeing in the MCU in the first and the second acts, at least, that I was like, this is just such a breath of fresh air. I thought that the actress that played Cassandra Nova did a really good job. I don't know if the character was really fleshed out enough for me, but the actress, I thought that whatever she was working with, she did a great job with it. Obviously, Deadpool is famous for being able to break the fourth wall and being the character being self-aware that he's like within the Marvel universe. I thought that some of these meta jokes and fourth wall breaks were really well done. We're going to talk about this again, but like there genuinely were some gems. I also thought that the personal struggle that Deadpool was facing, like an existential crisis and being in a depression because he feels like he's failed and just sort of like lost his purpose. Like he genuinely tried to level up and be like a better, more heroic person, but when he failed, he just kind of crumbled and fell apart and stopped living and let his life crumble to pieces. That's something that a lot of people go through. Obviously not on the scale of like, oh, like I got rejected from the Avengers. It's usually a smaller scale in life, but the struggle is something that I think a lot of adults and maybe even some younger people can relate to. I liked the song choices in the movie. They were just so ridiculous that, you know, you had like you were almost obligated to have a good time. A little trip down 2000s memory lane, some 90s in there too. I know Madonna is not for everyone, but that new mix, the new version of Like a Prayer, I mean, it's fun. There were some other positives that I liked too, like little blips here and there, but I don't want to be too detailed. I'm going to move on my list to the things that I had as positive/negative. Like, it sort of depends on how you look at it. One that I had, and this is where, like, this is what I was talking about earlier, about you have to shut off the part of your brain that's trying to like fit this into the MCU lore, because what I had was the connections to Loki. I liked that. I liked what that meant as far as, you know, like being able to travel to different universes and whatnot. But at the same time, like if you've seen the film, I was really confused, because if Cassandra Nova's plan was to use this universe-ripping bomb to like siphon off the energy of it and then to psionically be able to destroy universes at will, then like it wasn't that plan kind of doomed to fail anyway, since we know that Loki has elevated to like beyond a cosmic entity and is literally sustaining the life force of every universe in existence. I mean, that was like the whole point of the end of Loki season 2. And this film references Loki, so it's aware of the Loki lore and how things are working, but like, this is what I'm talking about. You just have to shut that part of your brain off, because it's like, do you really think Loki, like, you know, being now in that tree of life, his role is to just stay there for eternity, making sure that the multiverse is safe and stable and doesn't collapse? If he noticed that a lot of the threads were suddenly getting erased by some bald chick, don't you think he would just boop, like erase her out of existence, like beyond just the void. Like he'd be like, oh no, this bitch has to go, and just get rid of her ass. Like the plan feels like it was doomed from the start. And I mean, I know that there's no way for the Cassandra Nova character to know that, and I guess there still were some stakes because she was on the brink of deleting Deadpool's universe, like his home universe, as her first thread she was going to destroy. But as far as like her grand plan, just wanting to erase everything except for the void, there's no way that that would have ever happened, because Loki would have just, like, once he noticed, like, oh yeah, some threads are going missing, let me look into that, let me look into the threads of life, he would have zapped her ass, she would have been gone, and things would have gone back to normal. So that's what I mean. Like, when you try to fit this into some of the MCU lore, it really rips out a lot of the stakes, because it's like, she wasn't going anywhere with that plan anyway. Like, she might have made some damage, but there's no way she was ever going to be able to finish that plan. And that's what I mean by a positive and a negative, because if you've seen Loki, then there are so many references that are easier to digest and, like, to see things and just already know how the temp pads work and the portal doors, and even knowing what the hell the TVA is. Like, the movie in that way is better for you if you have seen Loki, but at the same time, if you have seen Loki seasons 1 and 2, and knowing what the Alioth creature is and all that, and what the void is, but like at the same time, if you've seen the end of Loki season 2, then it almost ruins the whole threat of the film for you, because you know that would never happen. Like, it would never work, because that was the whole point of Loki's growth journey. See, this is what I didn't want to happen. I wanted this to be rapid fire. Just don't deviate, don't dissect, just keep going, but we're trying. I had this in the positive and negative section, but this is really more of just like a random thought. I'm wondering how this film felt for Logan purists. I'm talking about purists of the film Logan. I loved the film Logan. I thought that it was a beautiful film, and just like a great character study and the end of a legacy for the character. But I still had fun at this movie. I did not take it too seriously. I was not insulted by the opening sequence. I already talked about it, and just like how bonkers and like insane I thought it was, but in a fun way. But I do wonder if there are some people who genuinely felt offended by how Logan, the film, was treated in Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that most of the people who I would call Logan purists are able to sort of like take it on the chin and still have a good time. But I'm sure that there are some who just felt like it was an affront to everything that Logan represented. And I don't know. I honestly, to people who feel that way, I don't know how to make you feel any better. Okay, I'm moving on to some negatives. Most of them I'm going to try to keep rapid fire. We might have to talk about some, though. And these are purely subjective. I am never claiming that my opinion is somehow supreme or better than anyone else's. These are just things that I would have liked to have seen, but I am not saying that these are things that had to change. These are just personal to me. I think that this film required a little bit too much homework to really understand everything that was going on, because to really get everything that was happening, you had to see Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, at least several of the previous Wolverine movies, Logan especially, and just at least a healthy mix of the Hugh Jackman's previous performances, and Loki Season 1 and Loki Season 2. Thankfully, you didn't have to see Ant-Man Quantumania or Multiverse of Madness or really anything else to really get it. You didn't have to see the Marvels to understand what was happening, but there was, to really understand all the references, even with their quick exposition introductions to things, you really had to do a lot of groundwork. And I don't know if the average viewer was going to do that much work. I really think that this film drew such a huge audience because it was what? Like, it's going to be a record-breaking $205 million opening weekend in North America, which for a rated R film is the new highest ever. And I don't think that we've seen a $200 million opening in quite a while. So we're talking big mega business here, like general average Joe consumers who don't follow the MCU flocked to this film during opening weekend. But I guarantee you, many of them did not watch Loki season 1 and season 2 because, as much as you love something or enjoy being a fan of something, you just can't change facts of reality and life. The viewership for all of the MCU shows has been disappointingly low. Now, some of the earlier ones may have performed well relative to the low Disney Plus subscriptions at that time, like WandaVision and Loki season 1 was sort of lumped in there. It was still within the first year or two of Disney Plus. But as the subscriber base for Disney Plus has grown, the audiences for these MCU shows have not become proportionately larger. In my opinion, it really is just a big problem for the film division side of the MCU moving forward because not enough people are tuning into the shows. And so how can you make the shows required homework to understand what's unfolding on the big screen? Like, it's just not working. One question that I had was how, and they might have explained this, maybe it just went over my head. If you know, please let me know in the comments. How did, unless it was with the time device, because I know, let me get my question out first. How did Deadpool get rejected from the Avengers in Universe 616? Because it said he was in the Sacred Timeline applying for the job. How did he get rejected there, but then get depressed and resign himself to selling Kia vehicles in his home universe of 10005? What was the plan? Like, if he did get accepted in 616, and see, this is where I'm like, you can't overthink it, but I'm going to do it anyway. If he did get accepted in Universe 616, was he just going to, like, bring his girlfriend and some of his friends with him into 616 and leave behind 10005? You know what I mean? It really didn't make sense. Like, even if he was getting to 616 with Cable's time travel machine before he destroyed it, because they said he destroyed it in the film, what was the plan, though? Like, if you got accepted in another universe, how were you going to make that work? Were you going to have, like, a work commute, use Cable's time travel thing to tap into the multiverse and, like, report in for duty in 616, but then come home to your apartment in Universe 10005? It made no sense to me. I think that an extra 10 to 15 minutes would have helped pad out some other areas of the film that felt a little bit rushed. One example is I feel like there were some awkward transitions. Like, for me, what really makes a film is when I get from start to finish and it's like I never feel like a jump cut or a transition to a new location felt inorganic or awkward or rushed. Like, when everything feels cohesive, to me, that's like an art, like when the film has ascended to a level almost on the level of art or even being true art. For me, there were some sequences where I'm like, oh, like I feel like something got chopped off on the editing room. Like, I just feel it, like something connecting this scene to where we immediately ended up. Something got cut, and that's why this feels like we sort of segued off this moment and now blam, like we're just immediately somewhere else doing something else, and it doesn't feel earned. It feels rushed and weird. I've already talked this to death, but what I wrote was that the TVA introduction, in my opinion, was a little bit too rushed. Like, if you watched the shows, then you're fine. You know what's going on. Even then, the film introducing the concept of the TVA to, like, fresh viewers, like, even though I knew what was happening, I was worried that average Joe viewers were going to be like, what the hell is going on? That was why I wrote that in the negative, that I felt it was too rushed, because at the pace that it went at, it really did almost feel like it was like Austin Powers getting a mission brief. Like, if you've seen any of the Austin Powers movies, then you know, like, he gets his assignment and he's in the spy headquarters and it's all happening over the course of like 2 minutes. and then he's just ready to go on his mission. One thing that I had in the negative too was I would have either liked more cameos or I would have liked more time spent with the cameos, padding them out just a little bit more, developing them a little bit more. There was like a rushed element to when we got a big cameo dump towards the end of the film. These were characters that should have been very tactical, but it almost felt like because of that limited runtime I was talking about, that they had to be like, okay, like, we're not really going to make a plan. We just agree with you. We're inspired by you, and let's all get in a car with a rocket launcher and just go do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, realistically, I feel like these characters would have been way more methodical and tactical with coming up with a plan. But at the same time, I do understand that the budget for this film, compared to other recent, like, mega MCU blockbusters, was very conservative. This, by far, is the biggest Deadpool budget there has ever been. But I think that I saw it was in the realm of, like, 175 million to 200 million max before marketing. Recent MCU films have been wilding out. Like, I think Thor Love and Thunder was $250 million. I think The Marvels was $274 million before reshoot. So that film might have been well over $300 million. It's possible. So this film, budget-wise, was conservative compared to those mega blockbusters. So money might have been the issue, or there's also a chance that they might have been forced to limit the number of cameos, because if this film had too many cameos, then that would gut the whole premise of being excited for Secret Wars. Like, the whole point of Secret Wars is to see every Marvel character ever in one, battle movie event. So that might be why some of these films, like even Deadpool and Wolverine, might be limited in the cameos, because if they really went all in, then it's like, why are we even doing Secret Wars? Another thing that I didn't quite love was the Void felt a little bit sparse, in my opinion. And this might have been where budget was maybe the bigger factor. I just felt like if at least thousands, potentially tens of thousands, maybe even infinite universes have been destroyed and regurgitated into the void, then wouldn't there be more multiversal, like, universe relics and just universe trash in the void? It just felt a little bit barren to me. There were some set pieces that were really fun, like the 20th Century Fox being in the void. That was, and obviously the Ant-Man set piece. But, like, for the most part, the void is just empty fields with an occasional Honda minivan in them. Cornfields and just forests and clearings and deserts, like different biomes. But there's very little, like, actual trash in there. This would have required so much more money, but, like, imagine if the void were filled with patches of entire set pieces from past films. And I know that would require a lot of CGI work, I'm sure, and maybe a lot of practical set design. But, like, imagine if, like, one of the biomes that Deadpool and Wolverine had to walk through was an entire chunk of the Xavier Mansion and estate. Like they just had to walk through it, and it's all destroyed and gone to crap anyway, but still cool just to walk through it and to see it all. Maybe another sequence would have been like a whole chunk of, like, a scene from one of the Fantastic Four movies, one of like the original ones with Chris Evans and Jessica Alba. I honestly don't remember if there are any, like, really recognizable scene locations in that film, but that would have been cool. The old Nationals Stadium from the Days of Future Past, or having to go through, like, that church, where they were trying to figure everything out in Days of Future Past, where the Sentinels were trying to take them out. Like if these set pieces felt like they had been dumped into the void, and, like, it was just, like, part of the ecosystem that, like, entire entire, you know what I'm saying. I'm over explaining it. I just think that cinematically that would have taken the concept of the void and the journey, would have taken it up like a whole other notch, versus them literally going through deserts and cornfields You know what I mean? One thing that I really didn't think made sense, and this is where I'm like, you have to turn it off, but I'm going to point it out anyway. Would a sling ring really be capable of opening portals to and from the void? Like, I guess that the void, maybe because the void is not a universe, it's almost like a dimension that exists outside of all realities, so maybe that makes it different, but like the sling ring cannot transport you from one universe to another. It just can't do that. So I don't know. I feel like the void could almost be considered its own like pocket universe, but like I feel like getting to the void with a sling ring is almost on that level of just opening a portal to a whole other universe, which we know shouldn't be within the established lore of the MCU thus far. Like that shouldn't be possible. So it really just did stick out to me. Like I think that even though it was a cool effect and, you know, for the nostalgia and whatever, I feel like it would have just at the end of the day been simpler and cleaner and easier if Cassandra Nova just had a temp pad. Maybe back in the day, they used to do recon missions to the void, like back and forth, just to monitor it for stability reasons or something. And at some point, Cassandra Nova killed a TVA agent or like a whole team of them and stole their temp pad. And that's how she has one. And she's like, like I'll hang on to this for, you know, maybe a rainy day someday. But like I'm enjoying myself here, so I don't need it right now. But I've got it in my back pocket for, you know, someday I might need it. I feel like that ultimately would have been a cleaner scenario versus her doing it all with the sling ring. But this is just me overthinking, again, the lore and the established rules and all this crap. I wouldn't have even had the question if it was just explained that she killed a TVA agent and took his temp pad. I wouldn't have even raised a thought of like, is that possible? Because obviously it would have been possible. Another negative that I have on my list is the stakes were not visually represented well in the third act, but that has been a problem with almost all of the multiversal projects. See, and this is the thing where I really almost wonder if the concept of a multiverse is just so unfathomably, unquantifiably large that it almost loses all of its sense of scope and danger. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I can't even quantify what it means for a whole universe to die. So like if I can't even like really process that, I can't really feel that, which is weird. I can remember during Age of Ultron feeling tension just from the thought of like, oh my God, the poor Sokovia, that the whole town or whatever, it's obviously going to get destroyed. But if this thing like turns into a meteorite and hits the Earth, and half the Earth is going to get destroyed, like there was tension during that for me. In all of these multiversal projects and even other films in recent phases that haven't dealt with the multiverse, like I just haven't felt that tension because it almost feels like these are all so sterile now, so formulaic, everything wraps up easily. I digress. I feel like they could have given Cassandra Nova a different objective because like her plan to destroy every universe except for the void, it's like, well, you know, we know that there's going to be a Secret Wars movie and an Avengers movie before that. And we know that there are like TV shows and a whole other movie pipeline coming out. Fantastic Four is coming out. So you know that this bitch is not going to succeed. Like that automatically gets the tension out of it. Aside from what I said earlier about Loki, like as soon as he would notice the strings disappearing, he'd be like, zap this bitch. Like just having a whole film lineup means that her objective to destroy all of existence, like there's no tension there because you know like that it's just not even possible with the film slate coming up. It's not possible. I think that she should have had a lower scale objective that would have let her be an ongoing future threat because again, like Marvel kills all of their most dangerous villains in the film in which they're introduced. Now, I know that they might fix this because they all have the potential to come back via the multiverse and Secret Wars, but it's like as far as like 616 is becoming very sterile. Like where are all the villains? They're dead. 616 is like the safest universe in the world right now because all the bad guys are disposed of. One negative that I felt, and this is just purely subjective, I honestly felt like there was less heart and less soul in this film versus Deadpool 1 and 2. One thing I think that was disappointing was the fact that he was doing all of this to save his relationship when it's like in Deadpool 2, he literally crossed the threshold of death trying to save the life of his girlfriend. And like they came back from that and got to have a chance at a happy ending, but now just because of some depression from being rejected from his dream job, he just let himself fall apart. And she was like, you know what, like if you're gonna be moping around not living life, then I just can't be here for you, even though you crossed the threshold of death to bring me back. So we could be together. We were even in heaven briefly for a little bit, and it was beautiful. And like the Deadpool 2 was so goofy, but that moment was just so beautiful and felt so earned. She's just gonna cut it off. Like I just like, and I know that that's real life. That couples, even that have been madly in love, in real life they fall apart. Things fall apart, and people grow apart, and they have to separate or whatever. But I was just like I don't know. I was just struggling with that in this movie because I was like, in Deadpool 2, like he literally like went to the other side to be reunited with you. And now like you guys are going to break up just over depression. I also felt like the development for this version of Wolverine was a little bit rushed. I feel like I don't feel like we ever really got a true earned insight into the depth of his despair, the depths of his heartache, of his inner turmoil. Like that, it all just felt a little bit rushed, and it just, I don't know. I think that ties back to the short runtime I was talking about. I really think that 10 or 15 extra minutes on this film to flesh a few more things out could have given this film more of that, I don't know, heart and soul that I was talking about. As much as I loved some of the meta and fourth wall breaking moments that I mentioned earlier, there were a few. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I just remember there were at least one or two that I would have clipped because at the time I felt like they were just more speed bumps, sort of killing the momentum versus actually being like a ha ha ha, like I'm so glad that fourth wall break happened. There were just one or two that I would have clipped off. Oh, my last negative that I had, I'm sure, like if I thought more and more, I'm sure that I could nitpick more. The last one I'm going to mention is the X-23 pep talk. I just couldn't take it seriously because she's telling, you know, the worst Wolverine in the multiverse that, well, because of like the other version of you, I mean, like the part of her pep talk was great because he's like, I forgot exactly what it was. He was something like, I'm never good enough or something, or like, I'm never the hero or something like that. And she was like, well, you never were. Sort of saying like no version of Wolverine is this, like, you know, Captain America type goody two shoes, but he always ends up doing the right thing, or at least trying to. Like, that's the whole point of every Wolverine, and that sort of re-inspires that Wolverine to join their effort to save Deadpool's universe and whatever from the time bomb. But like what killed me was when she was trying to inspire him and pep him up, and she was basically saying, you know, like, you're not much different from the Logan that I met, but because of that Logan, I still had the chance to grow up. He saved me, he saved other kids, and because of him, I had the chance to grow up. And I was like, girl, like, you had the, I don't know, I just couldn't take that seriously because I was like, sure, like, that's great, you know, you're older now, the character, but you basically grew up to get pruned and clipped and sent to an empty pocket universe, basically an empty hellscape. You know what I mean? Like, that's not Logan's fault, but at the same time, like, that's just what I couldn't take seriously. I had the chance to grow up, to end up here. Like that's the part that was missing, to end up in this shithole. like, growing up didn't end up being that great of a gift. That's just me being petty and nitpicky, though. But my final note that I'm going to end on, because I really did, overall, I liked this film. Like, was this a cinematic masterpiece? No. But was this just a lot of fun and an injection of energy and excitement that the franchise desperately needed and that the summer box office overall needed? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that this film was a lot of fun. It's far from perfect, but I mean, as far as Disney and MCU, like it far exceeded what I thought Disney and the MCU were going to allow it to be. I'm very relieved to say that. But my final note, ultimately, the film is a reminder of how poorly the MCU multiverse has been managed so far, but maybe that is the point, and ultimately the best meta joke of all. That's where I'm going to end it, guys. This mini discussion ended up being far from mini, but I hope that, I hope you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments any thoughts or just, I don't know, points that you had on the film. I'm not going to give this one a number rating. I really feel like a film like this is almost unreviewable as far as giving a score, because the film, it's a self-aware film. You know what I mean? So it's like not trying to be some auteur piece of work of art. Like, this film is just sort of just one big self-aware funny ride, and with some satisfying action scenes, and I don't need it to be anything more than that. And so I'm a satisfied viewer and a satisfied customer. I'll see you in the next one. Much love. Goodbye. Also, I'm sorry if my eyes were all over the place. I don't have my contacts in. And I didn't want to wear my glasses because the reflections are a little bit crazy. So I was trying to look at the camera, but if my eye contact was literally going into the void, I apologize. I'm blind as a bat and I was doing my best. Okay, see ya. Bye.